thank you, Joe. That is so nice. I really enjoyed it. I came here for the CCL and was here for a week. I think that city is so incredibly romantic and is such a nice place to be and has such a high density of quality design actually everywhere, as if this place is for taste. And yeah, that was always an inspiration. So thank you that I'm here. Thank you guys for coming out. Actually, I'm here on that stage since 1.5 hours or something because I thought it starts at 10, and then I was like, yeah, everyone has to make a decision, and that means red light district or robot talks, and they won't come, and they didn't came. Like, so I could prepare another work that I will show later because I just received some documentation files and I will show some of the work. So yeah, my name is Mio and I'm a dancer and I'm a coder for visual systems. And I run a studio in Berlin called Waltz Binaire. And it's Waltz Binaire, it's not Walter Binaire, because when I changed from Mio, everyone thought, yeah, well, now it's Walter Binaire. I never thought about that it sounds like a name. So some people say, hey, Waltz, how's it going? Some don't know me so well, so they say, Mr. Binaire. It's a studio, that means dancing with code. And the studio is not, it means a studio for human motion and digital design, but it's not actually so much about dance, but more about what moves people and how we can move things with digital design and how motion applies to digital design. I found that studio actually to come together with photographers, artists, choreographers, coders, scientists, whoever wants to investigate exactly that topic and work together. So for my background, I like to always explain it like that I'm a human body and I like to move like a robot. And I just enjoy that feeling. I don't know why, but the thing I think that drives me is that I become something else. I was never the kind of guy that runs in a club and needs to feel the rhythm all night. That's just not my thing. I also don't need to necessarily express myself on stages or something. I just like that feeling when I think I'm something else, maybe something bigger. I think I always wanted to be bigger, so I thought of that gigantic robot that just hovers in space, and I wanted to feel like that. And if you do this for a couple of years, you start to think like that, and you start to think that it becomes true once you do it. On the other side, I'm a coder, and I create as organic systems as possible. So I would like to describe my philosophy like this. So we have that human thing that behaves as mechanical and robotic as possible, and on the other side, we have that code that behaves as organic as possible. And if we overlap them, like this, in an artistic process, then all of a sudden we don't see the redundancy, all those weird things that we copied from each other. We see the thumbs, that's what's left, right? On the left and the right, the thing we couldn't copy, and all of a sudden that starts to stand out more than the things we copied. And therefore I think we are able to find what makes a machine and a human. Let's take this example. We did this piece in Vietnam together with those crazy street dancers that I knew for a long time. They're actually 19 and superstars in the hip-hop game, top 4 world rank, and they have no chance at all. Now those guys dance for 8 people families by themselves on the street, and if you look at the body you see that it's shaped actually by not a fitness studio, it's shaped by dancing the whole time on your arms. Now those guys are very, very close to machines, and however, if you take a machine and plot a graphic on top of them, you all of a sudden see that they ain't so perfect. You see that something poetic peels out of them, and you see all the fragile thing about those young bodies, and I like those moments when it peels so out, and we see, nah, somehow there's something left that we can copy, and that is something that is interesting to me. And hence, for today, I want to talk about how I apply digital technologies to dance and want to rethink dance. And then vice versa, how does my experience about dance influence the way I think about digital design? Now, my own background is, my mother is a coder, so she taught me when I was a kid how to code because she thought it helps to structure my thought. She always thought that I'm a little irritated and can't sort my day. And she thought that coding and algorithms are the best way to structure every thinking. So if you can code and refactor your code, you might be able to refactor your life. But that was 92, and unfortunately it was the same time when hip-hop struck Europe, and I was completely in it. And the nice thing about hip-hop is that the architecture of this culture and its then success is defined actually by being completely participatory and inviting. So when you go to a jam, then the circle of a dance has an equal distance to the center. It is designed, it doesn't have a stage, it is designed to be participatory. We say it's not a spectator sport because we don't like spectators. Everyone needs to produce, create and express. But maybe dancing is not your thing. So you go on stage and want to sing, but singing feels bad too. So you might be able to just speak and rhyme. Or you want to make some music with a piano or something, or play drums, but you can't. And you have no further education, but you might be able to play a record and touch it back and forth. It will probably be. Or you can draw a nice painting on the wall, but if you don't have that skill, you can still say Mio was here, and it's still hip-hop. So everything is non-elitaire in hip-hop and inviting you to say, I want to take part, I can do this. And this is what I like about hip-hop. However, within contemporary art cultures, it is also the harshest art culture, in my opinion. We have battles and we decide between good and bad art. We judge and we give away sponsorships for those who win. So it's a very competitive art form that brings up terms like get rich or die trying. And even though as it's very unusual to other art forms, I still feel like it has its reasons and it still determines my competitive thinking and how I try to achieve different things. So I was traveling all over the world and took part at battles, and it was around 2000 when I first thought about bringing those two things together, dance and code. Before that they were just parallel existing. And therefore I need to describe how this works. So in a battle, for instance, I love that style called tudding. It means that with 90-degree angles, you tell a little story, and you have only those 90 degrees that you can stop by, and you have to build those shapes. Now, the thing is, I think I was always talented in that thing, because I can think mathematical. So I went to battles and met people from China, Los Angeles, and Paris, and they did the same thing in their living room and nothing else. So if this is all you have in your only world, if you did this and all of a sudden you see someone tudding his arms behind his back, then this can become right away a complete catastrophe, because you get shocked, you know you haven't come up with that idea before, and you see it in front of you right now, and you're 30 seconds to go with your own solo, and you know that everyone was impressed. And you have a problem now. Now, I hated that feeling, of course, because it means basically that I lost. And I was thinking, what could I do? And what do those moments have in common that shocked me so much? So I saw people coming from here, and they had this rhythm here, and I was like, again shocked, again shocked, again shocked. And I wanted to find a structure of all the things that I liked and that shocked me. But I couldn't. The only thing that they all had in common is that I didn't know. That's it. So I couldn't know where it comes from. It wasn't my idea, and that was enough. But in its structure, it looked random, and that brought me to the idea to create myself a little robot that I can watch at home, and he goes through all possible positions with arms, and I can just go home after practice and watch him continuously watching him and waiting till he surprised me. So back then I was working like 6 months on that thing, because the shoulder always broke. And that brings me back to the fascination. As I worked so much on that thing to prepare myself for battles, I realized how difficult this thing shoulder is. So I did not become a fan of that machine going from a computer to the algorithm. I became back a fan of the human body and saw it from a new perspective. Trying to implement a shoulder is a disaster. Why are things possible in a matrix, and all of a sudden if you turn this here, it's not possible anymore? It can turn, twist, everything. And yeah, during this work, I kind of reinvented my love for the body and for the love that we all do. And yeah, that was my first battle project, and after this I went to contemporary theater, and I liked that finally the crowd that I was dancing for was sitting. That was very new to me, and I felt some kind of appreciation that is very interesting. I also liked that all of a sudden our culture and our thinking is in 3-minute dramaturgy, because we always dance to hip-hop songs, but in a theater you have to fill an hour or 1.5 hours. And for me, trying to learn that was super interesting. What I didn't like about contemporary theater, that I felt it is too exclusive. I always felt like as the career progressed, that there's people who cares, but no one knows. I always say no one has a favorite choreographer. I said at a conference before that I think dancing is not so cultural relevant anymore, and everyone wanted to question where relevance, where not. But if I ask my mother, for instance, and I can have a serious discussion with this, about her favorite actor, about her favorite storyteller, movie, musician, song. She knows one. She has an opinion actually about every art, but she couldn't call me one choreographer that matters to her. She doesn't know. So there is a whole art form completely vanished, and I think that's unnecessary. So I started working on a project called Rethink Dance, and I think a culture needs to reflect the society it lives in. Hence, our society is quite digital. It needs to work with this. And this project is actually about 3 phases of dance that are interesting and that go in that row. The first is how do we produce dance? The second is how do we perform dance? And the third is how dance is perceived. So the first one is an algorithm that can actually generate motion for you, and it's completely non-interactive. So think of the automata model of how a computer works. So I'm here, and this is the computer, and I put an input there, and then I see my feedback. So between this and, let's say, a projection of my moving body as I dance, there's no difference. Just my body becomes, again, what was the hand before, and the camera that detects me is like the mouse when I control a window, and the feedback is the graphics around me. Through this automata model, nothing changed, and we wanted to turn this around, saying, what if the machine just dictates on us, and we have to follow? Could we create an artificial environment that continuously stimulates us to move and inspire and get new motions? And so we had to come up with a visual language, and that's basically the visual language. We did this in collaboration with Informative. And this visual language consists of point, line, plane, continuously generatively transitioning between each other. So we have a point, and this can become a line, and then it could scale up, as you see it now on the screen, become a plane. And this could be in different permutations, so its possibilities are actually endless. And of course, you can apply this to 3D spaces, etc. So this is the project that we then did. I keep it on 100, sorry. dancers are Rafael Hilbrand from Animatronic Crew, Honji Wang from Wang Ramirez, and Joy from Akram Khan Company. Yeah, I think we really like this project, and it was very important to us. The findings is that, as we tried this out with many dancers, it's interesting how differently you need to approach different people. So some very athletic dancers played Twister with it, they touched everything, and I felt that's not really like the way of inspiration I looked for. And others, which is very nice actually, more, let's say, people that have a more poetic access to dance, they just stood there and couldn't really enter the space, as I felt that there's something cold and threatening coming from this strong machine that just dictates where it goes. And sometimes when I watched those people standing there, I felt like that is exactly what we're looking for. It's just an inspiration pattern. And if that inspiration pattern makes you not wanting to go in, then that is the perfect and very honest expression of this individual dancer, and that's the perfect solo. So the next thing is, how do we perform dance? And as we started with this, we investigate different technologies and how we could use technology on stage. But as I was taking over most of the technical part and less of the choreography, or had less time for the choreography, it turned out that every decision that we make artistic is a design decision. So we need, if that chapter is called performing, it needs to be performed. And if we just show it once, then it didn't make sense to us. So we wanted to have a bigger scale installation that we can tour with. So at the end, it was about solving problems, and I want to invite you a little about our decisions. So the first decision was, how could we make something big that is super cheap? So if you're tour on contemporary theaters, like let's say on a worldwide scale, you meet very different cultures and very different ideas about technical setups and stages, and that just belongs to those different places. So we need to make sure that the installation works everywhere, and that we are able to go to the theater, set up in 2 hours, and don't make that setup expensive, because we will destroy it at the end, and make it kind of look like an overwhelming situation that looks very real. So we decided to take those ropes, like, I don't know, there's a mull, I think it's called, those when you break your arm, and we directly projected the pattern into space and then shaped it from exactly where the pattern was before. Hence our installation time went crazy down. And all of the, so basically the installation cost 20 euro, and we were able to just take it in our backpack and go all over Nicaragua, Guatemala, Mexico. We went to Vietnam with it. We installed it at many different places, and we never had any stress with any financial circumstances. That was one part of our research, and the other was a little dancing thing here. We use that system to track motion and translate this motion again into music. So basically the music is playing to the body. The thing is with this work is I came back from that rehearsal and went home and looked at it, and I was like, yeah, well, we made it. It actually sounds quite harmonic for being interactive. You don't hear the measurement noise. It looks quite kind of like it could work. And then I looked at it again and I was like, wait, that actually looks like dance. If I don't show that on the projection, like, well, that's interactive, it looks just like a well-trained dancer who knows this song from the top of his head. That's exactly how it looks. So hip-hop dancers dance to music anyway. No one will ever find out if we don't write it with typography on the projector. That here, alarm, is a technical setup that was very hard to do. Please feel something. So we know that is some kind of gimmick, and we not only wanted to make this perform, we also thought, like, can we find something poetic in technology? Can we find something that means something to it, that without selling it as a joke? So the first thing I learned when I went to contemporary theater is stop doing your tricks to impress. That's just the wrong party to dance at. If you're at contemporary theater, you have a nice place to try and to communicate something. If not, you still can do funny jokes at music videos, and that's also fun. But in a contemporary theater, I think it should stay like that. Should be a place where we can communicate. So we kicked it out. We kicked actually a lot of technology out and brought it back to all those things that I think that mattered. It's a story about two guys in an artificial environment. And that is, for me, the whole poetry. That was the POW 2045, our experiment concerning the performance of dance. And the last one is the perception of dance. And that is maybe a little insight into how things can go wrong when they're tech-driven and nothing is behind. I was working on that 2.5 years ago, and I wanted to be dance perceived, more participatory and more accessible. Hence I thought the next solo I create should be in a web browser, and it should be for free, and all the code that was used to create it should be free too. And every day at 6, depending on where you are, you're locked free to go into this digital theater, and you are controlling this character as if you're dancing. And this project never happened because right now I think because it was technically driven. So we have this guy here. Let me see if I can add a little sadness to this. I really like Richard Skelton, and I was listening to this music basically the whole time when I created this. So we have that story. It runs in 30 frames in the browser. It has, I don't know how many particles. It has splines that can extend and measure the velocity. We have that character, and you get some feeling about him. There is something, I think. But in the middle of it, I I should start soon to think of what I want to do and how that should feel, what is the essence of it. And I got so technically driven that I always felt like, no problem, I just need to have a cinematic camera that is always on point, cutting him here or being in a total that makes sense, spinning a little with digital cranes, so I can give him some poetry and I will take care of what I want to say and how this environment should look like later. And after it was then done, like technically it's done, you now need to create something, I felt so empty because I started just the wrong way, because there was nothing and there's no reason actually why this guy should be there. Why should it's interactive, but I just didn't felt fulfilled by any content there. So, however, we will not stop with this project. We just made it die for a moment because I felt that there is no meaning to it that moves me. And we came back to this project saying, yeah, but maybe he's not in that browser, maybe he's with us, wherever we go. And there's an interesting thing. Because of a technical limitation, I'm not able in 3JS to have too many people dance. That is just very cost intensive. And so I needed one. And as soon as you have a solo, the topic could be related to something that looks kind of sad and lonely. And that is, so by technique, there's a definition of how this might look. And I was thinking like, why is he lonely in that space and how can I create that space? And then I felt like maybe he's lonely exactly where we are and he's with us. Now, if we do this with augmented reality, and then all of a sudden we can see him through this phone, and only through this phone, and everyone else can see him. Hence, this window to this world, that exclusive window, becomes the poetry. It is his drama, that he only exists there. And all of a sudden, for me, that technology made complete sense. As I felt like, yeah, if this guy is set out in the world somewhere and you have to find him till you see him, then you say like, oh, come with me, and you can control him like a character through the real world. All of a sudden, of course, yeah, you don't need to tell anything anymore. That becomes moving to me. So we thought about this and how we could implement this. And there's a nice project called Project Tango, which actually allows you to scan space and have a relationship to where you are. Hence, this character could run through the world that we are right now within. We could jump over obstacles and explore the city. And that was super interesting to me. And we could kind of interact with the real world. However, he just can be seen to that one observer. Yeah, so this is what we're currently playing with at the studio, and what we are, I think, going to release this year. The next chapter is actually how I like to turn this around and how I think about digital design and how our natural ability to move and our desire to poetry can be used in design. So the first project that we're going to release soon is called Tweener. So just in case for those that are not so familiar with it, in digital design, every kind of state change, every state and the transition in between is a mathematical function. If we take a gradient, this is a linear gradient, and it goes from black to white, then the brightness equals the x-coordinate, and that's it. And we see those tweens actually everywhere. We see them in motion, we see them in complex animations, and we see them in devices that are around us, and they illustrate also the character of this device. However, I feel like since they are always based upon mathematical function, that there's a certain coldness about them, that I feel that they just are different because of that mathematical function, but not in any sensual way. And I thought, could our ability to move actually contribute to the quality of those tweens? So if you ask someone to perform a little for you or express themselves, they might not sing and they might not draw, and also no one does a solo in that case. But some people are very good at being a conductor, for instance. They can wave their arms to their favorite song and say, "And now comes the highlight." And they have a lot of quality in there. And even those that are in a party and want to take part but don't feel good enough to go on the dance floor, they are able to have their finger on the beat because they have that sensuality. They know how to grab a glass. We have a lot of quality in there. So I thought we could make use of that quality by recording it and translating it into mathematical functions that then can be used for digital design. So this here is a tool, and I can create now my mouse motion. Those white dots is my mouse motion, or a two-dimensional representation of it. And this green and bluish line is a polynomial reduction that interpolates smoothly between those points. So now I don't only have, as you see that dot floating, I don't only have the recording of those points, I have an endless resolution between 0 and 1, which would be now no sound, and then we have that transition. So if we see this, we could also do this with sound. And we could do this with OSC or Connect. This data can basically come from everywhere or from the body or wherever you record it. And you can create different kind of animations with this. So this tool also offers you to play with it and see immediately the results. So this is, for instance, particles that move exactly the way I just moved my finger on the mouse. And we had shapes, and this will probably drop out because it turned out that all those shapes look alike, and that motion might be not the best way to define shapes. So yeah, we tried a lot with ray marching and stuff, but it just doesn't work. But we tried also icons, and we have some icons here. And we thought, like, why not? That's such a classical example of a work of a designer. Why not showing a loading bar that moves as sensual as I just moved my hand? And imagine the device that we spoke about earlier would always read out as I move my finger what's my style of sliding pages. And all of a sudden this device changes the way it behaves, the way the gradients pop up, and become a little bit more myself. Yeah, this project will then allows me to say, okay, I like this, and I can just right-click here and export it. And I go in a very different oh, that's a very, very different. Where is it? Here. In a different design environment. In that case, it's V4. And I can copy and paste that function. We have no save button. It is only about, it should be always on the fly. You do something, push it in there, and try to have a new design. So we say get function. And this is the gradient, which is linear now. And as soon as I put this in, it should work. Now this gradient represents actually my movement quality. We go back here and we say it starts slow and then fast. We right-click, go back to V4, copy and paste, and we have a different gradient. Hence, I'm on the fly the whole time able to conduct with my finger and create different gradients, different motions of millions of particles, alert between sounds or alert between videos, all in respect to how I just moved and representing those qualities. So that is the first project that we worked on. And the next project is Soap and Milk. And the thing that I like the most about this project is the trust and time we got from our client. So he asked us for a fluid simulation that is stimulated by the user's body. And that is basically what I did over the last years the whole time. And I do them in very quickly. I think this could be done in making it stable, like 5 days, and that's it. But I was able to convince them that it takes 3 months. And because I said, like, hey, well, it's not such a great idea, right? I'm just coming from that job, and I have that thing laying around. I switch logos. It might be better if we just do something really beautiful, or we try our best and come up with everything we can. So the idea was that you're in front of that installation and you tweet about that installation, and as soon as you do so, there's a bubble coming up in front of you, and this bubble then represents your tweet, and you can then again move it on that screen, and it becomes kind of interactive. So hence we have something in the real world, we send it over to this invisible internet thing that everyone speaks about, and it comes back to my place in that installation, and I can move it with my body. Yeah, and because of that time, we could also research in a serious way some interaction models. So this is a 160 frames per second camera that captures my motions. Hence, and I'm able to detect in a 2K image in real time where that body moves. You see those little arrows here indicate where that character moved. Normally, when you see an installation with an interactive projection or dance, you always see them very tragic. That's not a choice, an artistic choice. There's no other possibility with 30 frames per second. We couldn't measure anything, so you need to move slow. In that case, you're not even able to get rid of those particles. With 2K and 160 frames per second, it would detect if you do this, and you have emitting particles from your shaking t-shirt, just because this camera sees that in slow motion, but in real time, and can base its calculations on top of it. So more speed doesn't mean just more quality, it means something completely different and a different perspective. So this is the project that we came up with. Another nice thing is that they always said, we need soap, we need soap, we need soap. And I think soap is just such a mathematical disaster, because the nice thing about soap is that it just sparkles with weird things. It surprises you, that's soap. And so I thought, like, yeah, I don't know, let's see, right? I wanted them to get rid of it. And because I had that time, I did a lighting mistake, setting the light too low, so it broke and basically got under the water. And by accident, those little white lines here that you see on the dark spots started to appear and ripping off the initial input that I wanted to have. And then, by accident, it looked like soap. That happened because someone trusted the process, and that's why I want to emphasize that. Yeah, let's continue. The next project we did earlier this year was for IDO at the Design Museum London. It was, again, a nice project for us, because it gave you the chance to speak with an artificial intelligence about your fears about artificial intelligence when you get older. And I like this idea because it actually took away the technocratic perspective from artificial intelligence, which is a complex topic, and put it into a complete, human-centered perspective. How do we want to live when we get older and we have really meaningful artificial intelligence? How will this contribute to us? So we came up with an idea to put away the fears of that, to touch artificial intelligence by creating an organic environment that reminds us of a well of water that represents data. And whenever we go to this installation and we talk with this character, he builds a stone for us and shapes the stone, gives it a certain color that is very individual, and throws it back into the well of water where the other stones then lay in, which represents then a map of all the users that have spoken with this machine and how they felt with that machine. And that were actually the recorded things that people said to that thing. And I like actually the answers they gave, because they show a very realistic perspective about society in a very beautiful way. So there's, for instance, sad things, and then there is things where you can picture in which kind of mood this brother was right there. He just wanted to hang out, and then there were things where I was like, why now was he so honest? And I can understand, for instance, that wish, right? As we get older, I hope that we might get more important, or people remember us, or our friends remember us and value our work. And so you had that spectrum, and all of them are equally poetic. The one wants to have 1,000 girlfriends, and the next one wants to be more important. It's a super nice display, actually, about society that I really liked. So this is a little documentation about the work. It's called Talk to Me. So from the users, we were able to measure 6 different emotions by the use of IBM Watson when they answered the questions, and we created a little data sculpture for each emotion that gets more and more vibrant the more people get angry or sad, etc. That is my favorite, by the way. That is fear. It's like a tissue that touches itself. It's a soft tissue. It goes up, goes stronger, and puts a needle into that soft part again. And every shape, every data sculpture we did for every emotion, like this is neutral, is only and exclusively done with sine waves. So there's no noise, nothing. It's just an architecture of different sine waves. Just because, yeah, we like to learn with every project, and to create a visual data sculpture is our job. It wasn't that big of a challenge, so we thought, like, how can we get them all homogene with each other so they belong to the same topic? So we thought it might be within math. Yeah, that's a project I can't say anything about it, but just share it with you. Right, let's get closer to the summary. And this is the last project. I received some documentation clips last night, and then I was here too early, so I cut a little thing together. Nothing is polished, but I just thought it might be nice because it fills a little what I want to say. There was that opening of this beautiful building. It's the Culture Palace in Dresden. And we are supposed to do a projection mapping on top of it. And there's inside a concert, and then it's streamed outside so people can enjoy this on this beautiful place in front of it. And so Dresden in Germany right now is the center of the protests against this refugee crisis and against our current politics. So it's such a beautiful city, but it has some kind of violent smell to it right now. And they asked me to do a projection mapping on that, and they gave me this song, and it's from Schubert, and it's called Pilgerweise. And it's a guy, I couldn't believe it, it's a guy that sings the whole time, how he walks from house to house and asks for help, because he is just walking, and that's his life. And the only thing you can give to him is some love, and he will never give something back. He can maybe sing and dance for you, and that's it. And he's very honest, actually, with not being able to give anything back. But it's so poetic as he asks for it. It really moved me, and I had to listen to that song for 3 weeks, like 10 hours, and I just didn't get rid of it because I felt like it lets something out that touches me since a long time. I'm not the most political person, but I just feel that it's just so wrong. And he was singing that so long ago as people always asked for help. So then they decided, so what could we do? On that stage, we could turn the architecture. You have seen those projection mappings on those things, and there's not much needed for this, and we can stream outside the sound and then make an interactive reaction, so the particles get boop, 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 if the person gets louder, and all those buzz gimmicks that were not necessary, and I love to do them all the time, and that's part of my job. But the topic sounds so wrong, the place sounds so wrong, so I said, like, I just don't want to do it. Like, it just feels like a stupid joke for an important thing. So I said I want to do all my visuals to exactly what he says. So I made a different scene to every sentence that he spoke that I felt said exactly what it is. So I made a little choreography about a person who goes from A to B and pulls up that desire and the power. So he knows he doesn't like A, he wants to go to B, and there's so much power needed for this. And I hope that quickly cutted video shows a little what happens, and yeah.
Ein Tag dem anderen angereiht, vergrößert euren Liebesschatz, vergrößert euren Liebesschatz. Doch mir, so wie ich weiter strebe, an meinem harten Wanderstrad reißt in des Glückes Osterleben mein Fallen nach dem anderen ab, reißt in des Glückes Osterleben mein Fallen nach dem anderen ab, mein Fallen nach dem anderen ab.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this project, and what an interesting finding is that if you project on a big surface, a big chair, it's just a big chair. And if you project a human body, then something happens with you. All of a sudden, he's very important, but he could be you. And I was thinking that might be interesting to investigate how, if we can create a story about that digital character that is obviously not alive, and we could somehow feel for him, we could maybe just in general feel for others. So working with dance and technology, I want to sum up real quick what I think about those two worlds. I think digital media in general could be sometimes, no, let's say dance could be a little bit more open to technology and represent our current culture. On the other side, let's speak about digital design. I think it should be sometimes more poetic. A little story, there's a technique called modern dance. It's from Martha Graham at the beginning of the 20th century. That's a technique. Then there is a topic, the Rite of Spring, Sacre du Printemps. It was created 2 years before the First World War and was the first piece in which people didn't dance to the up because their body is so light. It's a piece that goes like this. Dunk, 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 dunk. It's with a heel down, as if we go down in that spring for this new age into a world of dirt. And that was the new way of ballet, and it was a shock to people because that's disgusting. But it was quite contemporary for that time as it represented where we go next as humans. Now, 1975 roughly, Pina Bausch did Sacre du Printemps, and she reinvented what she thought is the rite of spring, what happens in spring. And for her, it was not a war, it was a sexual thing between two partners. It is the thing when we grow up and all of a sudden we lose virginity and we start to lie, cheat, and treat each other not always the nicest. And she did that piece, and let me explain this from a hip-hop perspective. The whole topic of the rite of spring and the dance modern, which is basically her technique that is, in that moment, 60 years old, she bombed that whole topic so hard that it does make sense to try it again, because it fits so well to tell that story with that gestures about two persons maybe losing each other. And then, after those 50 years, it might be the end of modern dance and the beginning of contemporary dance the way we know it today, because it has been said. That is 50 years of technological development. So we nowadays, we need every year a new interaction device, and we need to work with this as those buzzwords go through a chain of insecurity, and hopefully someone makes that project happen. But at the end, I think it doesn't matter if you work with clients, big agencies, or if you work with curators in the art form. If you go for those buzzwords, you might get this project to work, but they will come back and say, yeah, oh, it was nice, yeah, cool, we used that technology, but no one felt anything. So I'm not against new technologies, but I do believe that the idea of new media defines that there is no expert in the room, because for everyone, that media is new. So I would suggest more to call it experts trying their best to do something very poetic and meaningful with contemporary technology. So that's what I'm interested in. Thank you very much.